government employees. And then we can just talk about what's going on at the state level. The cases are out there, folks. There's so much yet to go. Here's one of them I'll refer to right now. The FBI rebels. The fight to take back the government is a long way from over. And that's exactly right. Amongst Trump supporters these days, you hear the phrase, "we are so back." You hear that a lot. You know, that is so true. I see that on social media all the time. And I think when I hear that, that is a foolish person. Or it's a person that's involved in, what did Alan Greenspan call it? Irrational exuberance. Remember that over the stock market? I think to myself, that's a person involved in irrational exuberance. When I see someone say, "oh, we're so back," and they were doing that like from day one, or even before he was sworn in, I thought that's not something that I would be posting. It makes you look silly. That's a slogan. That's being a sloganeer. Because we are far from being so back. The work is just beginning to try to restore the republic. And my friends, as you're already seeing in the first less than 3 weeks of President Trump, much of the damage that was done under Biden with executive orders, well, it's being undone with executive orders by President Trump, which means everything can go right back to where it was largely after the 4 years of President Trump. That means in 4 years and 3 weeks, or now 4 years and 1 week, whoever gets into the White House next could do the same thing he's done, sign all these executive orders, putting men back into women's sports, funding abortion, clamping down on freedoms, getting us back in with the UN. We can go right back to where we were in just a little less than 4 years with executive orders. I'm excited for the executive orders in some regard, but I'm also aware, my friends, this is just a Band-Aid. Does that mean I don't think President Trump should be doing the executive orders? No, it does not. But these are temporary solutions to major legislative concerns. We've got to change laws. We have got to return the power to the states. This is one reason I'm so happy that President Trump is talking about defunding the Department of Education and telling the new Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, I don't even think she's been confirmed yet, that, if you do your job, you're going to be out of a job. And the left is going crazy. And yesterday on my show, Brannon Howse Live, I played a video of I guess she's the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Now, that's a liberal group. I think in my 1993 book, Cradle to College, which is now available in the vault. You don't need to buy any of my books, folks. Save your money. When was the last time you heard an author say that? You don't need to buy any of my books. They're in the vault at worldviewtube.com/vault. Along with all of my radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, articles, transcripts, conference DVDs, documentaries. And of course, you get the live stream things, some special live streaming things we do, like coming up February 22nd, Saturday night with J.J. Carroll, Colonel Rob Maness, Todd Bensman, all in studio for live streaming members only. And then, April 15th, we're going to be in Milwaukee at the Waukesha Expo Center. Worldview Radio Bible Prophecy Rally. And that'll again be live streamed for members only. More details are available at worldviewtube.com/vault. And by the way, if you want to register for that, we had over 100 register within a few hours yesterday. You can register for that event. It's free, but we need to make sure we're putting out enough seats. You can do that at worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. Put an S on the end of that, worldviewtube.com/events. And you can register. Spread the word, will you, folks? Let's pack it out. Now, In that vault, you'll find my book, Cradle to College. And I think it's in that book I talk about the American Federation of Teachers, or maybe it was the PTA, which doesn't really matter because all these groups work together. The PTA back in the early 90s were describing Christian and conservative parents as extremists. They actually put out a full brochure stating that conservative parents were extremists, religious parents, the religious right, extremist. And here you had yesterday, the video I played on Brannon Live, the president, I think that's what her title was, of the American Federation of Teachers, having a fit over what Donald Trump's going to do with trying to defund the Department of Education. And she contradicted herself because she said that, 90% of what goes on at the state level anyway. The federal government shouldn't be running it. Really? And then she goes on to say that President Trump doesn't have a right to take and cut this money and give it to billionaires. She's just making that up. And then she goes on to say that the reason we need a federal Department of Education, which she just said a while ago, the federal government shouldn't be running the education. 90% is done in the states, and they shouldn't be doing it anyway. But then she says the reason we need a federal Department of Education is because we need to have kids put on career tracks. It's important. And the states, she says, are not doing this, putting kids on career tracks. Oh, wow. Now, any of you that are long time and regular listeners know she just swerved right into one of my wheelhouses, and that is what? School to work. Do you guys remember when I went to Chattanooga, Tennessee, Hamilton County in March of 1996? Logan, I think for TV side, you have some pictures. I flew in there. That's when I flew still. Stopped flying in 2005. But I flew into Chattanooga. Actually flew into Atlanta and drove up to Chattanooga. And there was a lady by the name of Helen. Helen, I still have a Bible that Helen signed and gave to me, her and her husband. Helen was in her early 80s. And Helen had been listening to me as a regular guest host of Crosstalk on WDYN. This is all coming right off the top of my head. I hope I have it right. I think it was WDYN out of Chattanooga. It's a 100,000 watt station. And I was sitting in as a guest host of Crosstalk quite a bit in early 90s of 1996, talking about my book, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk, which went into School to Work and all these programs. And they were having in Chattanooga, Hamilton County, a guy named David Hornbeck, who was a friend of Hillary Clinton's. And they were wanting to give the Public Education Foundation, I think like $1 million grant or something to get started. And they were working with businesses in Chattanooga to basically set up what I was already warning about on a national level, which is school to work. We're going to do job shadowing, job training while they're still in school. Now, I have no problem with kids going through mechanical school, a welding school, a wood shop, and learning a trade. But everybody should get a good 12th grade basic education. Does that mean everybody should take algebra or advanced algebra and all that? No. But everybody should get a good basic education in 12th grade so they can say later on, I do want to go to college. Not take a career choice in high school where they don't have the necessary credits to go on to college if they so choose later. Because the school counselor could be pushing them to go into a career track, and after they get out of school, they're like, you know what? I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to go to college. Oh, no, I don't have enough credits to get into a college. Everybody should get a basic education that allows them to go on to make choices and not be funneled into a job track by big business, the Chamber of Commerce, workforce development boards that are spread throughout the country, projecting the supply and demand of the workforce, or as happened in one of the cases that I document in my book from 1995, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk, which again, you don't need to buy. The PDF is in the vault. I testified before the Senate in Kansas. There was a state senator up there. Her first name is, I think, Lori or Laura. I wish I could remember her last name. Karen Swanson, who listens to my show, she'll remember her name. Karen, if you remember her name, you can text me that, because you were involved in, I think, introducing me to her. And her husband and children would show up at some of our Wichita Worldview weekends. And this state senator said, Brannon, why don't you come up here to Kansas and testify before my Senate committee on the danger of these school to work programs. And so I did. I went to Kansas, there in Topeka, and I testified before her committee. Now, there was a lady that was testifying with me. I think her daughter's name was Darlene, but I don't remember. I'd have to look at my book. But her daughter was a self-described Christian and a advanced student, honor student. And she, along with other stories I could tell you that are documented, was told she should become like a bartender or a waitress. Now, if I remember the story correctly, this is one of the students that wanted to go work for NASA, had even arranged a meeting with the flight director of NASA. I think she lived in Nevada, which explains why they wanted her to go into either bartending or being a waitress. Oh, wait a minute. Who made that up? That would be your workforce development boards that are trying to plug bodies into certain jobs. Now, why would they tell this young lady who had advanced classes, an honor student, she needed to do this? Could it be because she had a conservative Christian worldview? I mean, this is what Aldous Huxley wrote about in his book, Brave New World. Square pegs don't fit in round holes and tend to have dangerous thoughts about the social system and infect others with that discontent. Remember that? So this lady yesterday with the American Federation of Teachers is complaining that Donald Trump is going to cut the funding of the the Department of Education and that we need this for career track and training. I'm like, whoa, this is a flashback. Remember, I have a actual book from the Department of Education in Minnesota where the students were described as raw material and the parents were described as the suppliers of the raw material. Guess who the customer was? Not the parent, the taxpayer. The customer was business. They're turning the schools into vocational centers for business. Donald Trump is right to shut down the Department of Education, but he needs Congress to do it. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHowseBG.com. All right, so I'm dealing with this phrase now where not everybody, but a lot of people are posting on social media, we are so back. And when I see that thing, that is just, again, juvenile behavior. It shows a lack of substance, a lack of education. And I know some people maybe do it exuberantly. Again, it's this irrational exuberance. I get it. I'm not trying to be too hard on people. But when I see it, I'm thinking, don't do this. Because you're causing people to believe that the work has been done. It's all now going to magically get taken care of. Donald Trump will take care of it all. And his administration, we're so back. No, we are so far from back. We haven't even begun to restore the republic. And the left, the progressives, the Marxists, they're fighting. The left is in the streets. We're seeing these pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian groups flood into the streets of Washington, D.C. after President Trump says, hey, we're taking over Gaza. We're going to own it. We're going to develop it. And apparently that's getting quite the positive result in the response. As if you go to worldviewreport.com today, which is your daily aggregated news. I put these up myself. And I see here, where is it? One of them about Trump in Gaza. But one of the articles I put up today is getting quite a positive result with some of the folks in Israel. Yeah. Trump, Gaza plan is the first good idea I've heard, says Netanyahu. I saw another article today. I thought I posted it. Maybe I didn't. Yeah. Israeli politicians welcome Trump's proposal for U.S. takeover of Gaza. So those are both at worldviewreport.com. But out in the streets of Washington, D.C., you have all the progressive Marxist, the red-green axis, which is the red-green axis is your Marxist and your Islamist. And where are the people that are patriots, conservatives, Christians, constitutionalists? A lot of them are just sitting on social media talking about how we're so back. The left is still in the streets. And if that's going to be our mentality, this is going to be a short 4 years of a reprieve and a Band-Aid, and then it's going to go right back to where we were in about 3 weeks with all the same executive orders being reversed. Unless there is a couple things. One, we have to have good legislation. You see, Donald Trump can't shut down the Department of Education. He can take away some of their funding. He could order, and I've been saying for years, if I were president, one of the first things I would do is go through the Department of Education and I would pull out all their computers. Nobody would have a computer. Nobody would have a phone. They would come in and they would be given crossword puzzles every morning. And they would be ordered to complete X number of crossword puzzles. That'd be their job. And if they didn't complete them, then that would go on their record because it takes a while to fire a federal employee, I guess. But I'd clean out every computer from the Department of Education building, all the phones, everything. It would be a sterile environment with nothing but a desk and number 2 lead pencils and crossword puzzles. Because there would be nothing I would want the Department of Education doing. Because it's an unconstitutional agency. It's not in the Constitution. The powers the federal government has are limited, express, unlisted powers belong to the states, respective people thereof. But he can't shut it down on his own. He can defund it. He can maybe let some people go, but he's going to have to be careful because they're going to run, their unions are going to run to judges. He needs Congress. And that's going to be harder legislation to get, but it's also going to be harder legislation to undo. Executive orders, they can be redone in a matter of minutes. So people that say, well, we're so back, they don't understand. In addition to good legislation being passed, which means the people on the right, the center, the libertarians, the conservatives, the patriots, the constitutionalists, wherever you want to call them, they too are going to have to be in the streets in a peaceful manner, obviously. They're going to have to make their voice known and heard. They need folks to know in Washington, this is what is the will of the people. They need to know that if they do not want to follow the will of the people, then yes, they will be primaried. People will raise money. People will work the grassroots, and they will work to primary any of these rhinos or any of the people in the other party. The people want a return of their government, of the people, by the people, for the people. The other thing we have to do is restore states' rights. Restore state rights. And yet I don't see a whole lot of governors really speaking up on a national level on this. Maybe one or two. And some of the attorney generals. But again, this needs to become a major, major issue in the next 4 years. Less than 4 years. We do it now. We need people to understand the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The average American does not know what the 10th Amendment is. They need to. They need a good education in the 10th Amendment. And to use this to shut down these agencies, defund these agencies, return the responsibility where it goes, the states and respective people thereof. Last night, we played, when you go to Brannon Howse, or when you go to Worldview Tube later today, it's not up there yet because I haven't written the titles. The guys rely on me to give them titles for each segment from the night before, and I haven't done it yet. But one of the segments last night was we played news clippings, or news reports from the TV stations in Chattanooga, Tennessee, from when I went there and spoke in 1996, March of 96. And if you guys remember that, Vic Eliason flew in there and filmed the whole thing. I just texted one of the guys at VCY today and say, do you have the VHS of that? Because Mr. Eliason was down right there on the floor to my left as I was speaking, which was a real encouragement, folks, when he showed up all the way from Milwaukee to be there and film it. But just knowing he was there was a real encouragement to a young 30-year-old. Because this room was packed with 1,000+ people, and I didn't know what percentage were friend or foe, right? I found out after a few standing ovations, and they weren't applauding me, they were applauding the message of parents' rights. But I didn't know. All I saw when I pulled up with Helen and her husband, she was in her early 80s, and she said, this guy needs to come to town and speak and offer the alternative view. Because we don't want this $1 million going to this group connected back, if I remember correctly, to Hillary Clinton for this school to work agenda here in Chattanooga. And this gentleman ought to get equal time. So the school board, some on the school board were conservatives and said, sure. So they invited me in to speak at the request of the Hamilton County School Board. And they had to keep moving it to another building because the crowd they heard was going to show was bigger and bigger. And I was on the news the night before I got there. I was hearing over the phone, because we didn't have cell phones and everything like we do today, the audio of what the news stations were saying about me coming into town the next morning. You know, one of the groups put out there that Jerry Falwell had tapped me to go into Chattanooga. Jerry Falwell did not order me to Chattanooga. They got that because they found out, I guess, I was writing a regular article for the Liberty Journal. So I go in there, and when I got to the building and they pulled in the parking lot, Helen and her husband, who were hosting me, when I pulled in and they pulled into the building, there were all these media trucks, satellite trucks. So the media was there. And last night we played some of the media reports where the media interviewed me. And of course, the Parent Teachers Association, the lady tied to that, and we have the paper news clipping. We're putting it online, actually, here in the next few days. She said Howse is an extremist comparable to that of the Ku Klux Klan and the blacklisting of the 1950s. By the weekends, they were drawing cartoons of me in the paper. House of Fear, banging on a big old drum, leading a parade, like the Music Man. What was I talking about? The very same thing that this president of the Federation of American Teachers was calling for yesterday as I played it last night on Brannon Howse Live. Career track training. We need the government doing this. Now, can I ask you, my friends, how many of your conservative talk radio hosts, your Christian talk show hosts, know anything about this topic? Or that it's really from the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto, the merging of education with industrial production. But we're so back. We're so back, they say. But yet most of them don't even know the issues of the day. Can they tell you what Fabian socialism is, communitarianism is? Do they know about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, a sustainable development? Do they understand these worldview issues? No, most of them do not, but they're good at slogans. And they're good at pushing these slogans around, convincing other people, I think, just chill. Just chill. It's all taken care of already. We're already back. No, we're long from it. Long way from it. When I interviewed Matt Staver, Here's one, putting Idaho on guard. No Christians as commanders. Policy is unconstitutional. That's in Idaho. That's supposed to be a conservative state, but we've had people on here saying, no, it's really not. It's a rhino state. Most of your Republicans here are rhinos, or they're of the other party, but they run as Republicans because that's the only way they can win. But no, it's not a conservative state in a lot of ways. Are there some conservative policies? Yeah, here and there. But there's a lot of craziness going on there in Idaho. There's another case that Liberty Counsel's dealt with, and that's a father. And the judge has said that his child, the mother and the father never got married. Apparently they had a child out of wedlock. One of them becomes a Christian, the mother, and she's going to a Calvary Chapel church. And she's taking her daughter to Calvary Chapel church, and the father is objecting. And the judge spent 11 pages the judge spent, and this is up in Maine. The judge spent 11 pages going after the church. Here's what it says to the Liberty Counsel. The judge spent 11 pages excoriating Calvary Chapel Bangor and quoting a former Marxist sociology professor's assertions that Bible-teaching churches like Calvary Chapel are, quote, Moses cults, end quote, that, quote, harm, end quote, children. The judge apparently referred to God with a small g over and over. Oh, but we're so back. No, we have a long way to go. The other night, I interviewed Scott Scara. His 19-year-old daughter, I think BCY and Jim Schneider's interviewed him. That's what he told me. He's from Wisconsin. I interviewed him for an hour. That was like one of the most compelling interviews of showing how dangerous we're at times are. He, on his own website, says his daughter was killed, what he called medical murder. Medical murder. Do you know, apparently, according to him, it's now legal to euthanize people. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. Welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. I'm going over some of the issues today to show you that we are not so bad. Because I'm afraid that this slogan is going all over the place, is convincing people that everything's going to be taken care of. You know what it's like? It's like QAnon. QAnon was and I was never part of that. I always exposed it for what I thought it was. Psychological manipulation of people to let them believe that it's all taken care of. I had people that would text me or email me, you don't need to do what you're doing. You don't need to do what you're doing. You don't need to talk about these issues you're talking about. This has all been taken care of. President Trump has it all under control because there's a plan. Don't you know he's still the president? The military is really running the country. It's the inauguration was fake. Well, yeah, it was, but not in that sense. That it was all, with a green screen and President Trump's really still the president. All this QAnon stuff. And I said, this is crazy. This is really meant, I think, to get people to sit down, be quiet, and think that it's all right. It's part of the plan. Hey, it's all part of the plan. What? Why are you hyperventilating over there, Howse? It's all part of the plan. It's being done to draw out the enemies, and once they have exposed themselves, they're gonna get their day in court. It's all part of the plan. Don't resist. What a major psychological operation. And I think when I hear people putting all over social media, we're so back, I'm thinking, this sounds to me like another psychological operation. It's all under control, people. Just sit back. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's what they want you to do. The globalists, the leftists, the Marxists, the rhinos, they want you to sit back and do nothing. Just think it's all taken care of because we're back. No. President Trump's signing executive orders. People are suing already. They're already suing over whether or not he can move men out of women's prisons. You guys all heard the executive order this week, which I agreed with. We're not going to be housing men who think they're women in women's prisons. Sorry. Well, did you know that's already been stopped by a judge? Are you aware of the judges that are already halting these things? Oh, but we're so back. Anyone that says that, you might want to just go ahead and block their social media account because it either shows they're not doing their homework or they're easily manipulated. Scott Scara, who I said I interviewed the other night, again, I think he's been on with Jim Schneider on Crosstalk. I mean, the gentleman lives in Wisconsin. This happened in Wisconsin. His daughter, Grace, had Down syndrome. She's sadly passed away. Like many of us, when the whole COVID thing happened, he didn't have all the information. I didn't have all the information. I got COVID so early, February 4th of 2020, and I think I got it from somebody that came right from China. Spent a day in my studio, and at dinner that night said, I just got back from China. My wife said, you should have seen the look on your face when he told you that over dinner. Because I'd already said to my family, I'm not fooling around with this thing, whatever this thing is, because we were tracking it. If you guys go back in our vault, you guys will know we were talking about China and face masks and the fact that the face masks, medical face masks were in short supply because it was going on in China. And I'd run into some people in town that ordered face masks, surgical masks, and were shipped to the U.S. and they couldn't get them because China was holding them because of this virus out over there. And we were tracking all that. Remember that? Way ahead of everybody else. That there's something going on in China. So I already knew something was up. Evident and documented through our radio shows when you go back in the early 2020 and listen. And this guy comes to my studio, and after I spent all day with him, announces at dinner he just got back from China. And I was like, I don't know if this is Unrestricted Warfare, the 1999 book written by two Chinese communist colonels. I don't know if this is, a bioweapon. And I was taking it very, very seriously. You can go back and listen to my shows when it really made it into the mainstream and shutting down flights and what we should do. And if you listen to those shows, I was being extremely vigilant about it. And if you listen to it now today, you'd say he's overreacting. But you have to put it into the context of having read the 1999 Unrestricted Warfare document by two Chinese communist colonels saying we're going to use bioweapons to infect Americans, kill off Americans, kill 2/3 of the American race, and leave a third behind to be the servants of the superior race. That's a speech by a Chinese general. And then add Unrestricted Warfare document to it. So I'm looking at it through that lens. So the point I'm trying to make is we all didn't really know what we're dealing with. In fact, when I had COVID the first time around, I was so sick, sicker than my wife had ever seen me to that point. We didn't know what it was until I had the flu because it wasn't all over the news. Oh, go check your oxygen level. You better get to the hospital. We didn't know all that because I got it so early that wasn't out in the press yet. There's a few nights I got up in the middle of the night and I said to my wife, I'm having a hard time breathing. I just propped myself up in bed and tried to stay calm, went back to sleep. That went on for a couple nights. A lot of us just didn't know. We didn't even know what to do, what to take. Scott was the same way. So his daughter gets what he thinks is the flu or something cold. And he goes and he gets an oxygen, meter like you put on your finger like we were all doing, which we learned later from medical doctors. Well, you have to have a baseline. What is your oxygen level like when you normally have a cold or the flu? Yeah, that's a normal oxygen level for someone that's suffering with a cold or the flu. But people were being told to do this, and pretty soon they're like, oh, we better get you to the hospital. And he takes her, and he's told that, we'll get her some on some oxygen and get her some medications, some steroids, and she'll be home in 3 days, 4 days. And as he detailed on the show the other night, this hospital starts pumping her full of what I know is Ativan. Lorazepam, I think is the generic word, Ativan, and steroids, and then eventually morphine. Now, you guys know, if you go back into the vault, we have talked many times about morphine being used to euthanize people here on this broadcast. We've had nurses call into this broadcast talking about the amount of people they see dying who are being pushed morphine onto them. Well, you know what Scott told us the other night? I didn't know this. This is, at Brannon Howse Live. It's now on Worldview Tube until it rolls into the vault. He said that Obamacare in 2010 legalized active euthanasia. It legalized it. He said that in 2011, he found a multi-page paper written about how to go ahead and euthanize people. We're going to get some of the documents he's talking about and have him back on. He says that he found a document where the medical industrial complex is being encouraged to euthanize children, young people, adults with Down syndrome because they're a burden to their family. Well, guess what? Scott and his family didn't feel that way about Grace. She was a blessing. He called her over and over in the interview my best buddy. And he said they murdered her. And he said it's medical murder. He's suing. And well, he should. He said the medical paper says these children, these adults with Down syndrome are a burden on their family. Oh, but we're so back. We're so back, people. All the problems have been solved. No, they have not. How can you solve a problem you don't even know exists? I didn't know. Did you know? I didn't know. This is what I do for a full-time occupation. I didn't know that active euthanasia had been legalized through Obamacare. Now, I knew there was talk of the European model of taking your age, the cost of your treatment, and dividing that into a formula and deciding whether or not you were worth saving. I knew that. We've talked about that. But I had no idea there was actually wording that made active euthanasia legal. Now, I've not seen the document. I'm just taking Scott's word for it. And Scott, I was going to ask him, what did you do for a living? Were you a architect, an engineer? I told him that would have been my guess. He told me he was CPA originally, and he's retired. And I said, well, I was going to ask you because you're so precise and you're so detailed in your descriptions and research that I'm thinking to myself, this guy is very analytical in his thinking. This guy is very, very analytical. He has to be like an architect or an engineer. He did something like this in his business career that gives him the skill set to take all of this data and to be able to organize it and to present it and to understand it and connect the dots with the logic that's necessary. And I'm thinking he had to have been something where he was very, very involved in logic and processing data. But he's an accountant. Well, yeah, there you go. Okay, that would fall into that wheelhouse. Yes, he's an accountant. If you can figure out the IRS code and trusts and setting up family trusts, yeah, I think you can go through all this legislation and figure it out. And that's what he's done. How many of you knew that active euthanasia had actually been legalized, according to Scott, through Obamacare? I didn't know that. How can we fix a problem we don't know exists? We have a lot of work to do. We have a short window to do it. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. Karen just texted me. That state senator was Lori Bleeker. That was her name, Lori Bleeker. That's who had me come and testify before the state Senate in Kansas. I just remembered her first name was either Lori or Laura, but there you go. Isn't it amazing, folks, how so many of the issues that we have dealt with over the years are boomeranging back around? Like school to work, the role of the Department of Education, the federal government in education, active euthanasia. A lot of the issues that are old, so we thought, are now new again, aren't they? And here's the other issue. If you don't have a solid worldview, you have no clue really how to process these things, do you? Not to mention, obviously, bringing in the spiritual aspect of it. And then you add it into social credit scores and socialized medicine. 1-800-347-9829. We'll take your calls, your questions, your comments. 1-800-347-9829. So this gentleman has this article amongst Trump supporters, the phrase, "we're so back." He says, not so fast. It's only been a matter of a few weeks already. We're seeing signs of major resistance within the government to the sitting president of the United States. And that includes the FBI and so many of these other agencies. We'll be right back with your calls. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. All right, let's go right away to the phone lines, 1-800-347-9829. Let's go right away to Bruce in South Dakota, line 1. Hi, Bruce.
Yeah, how's it going?
Great, Bruce.
I would like you to urge all the listeners that they should be contacting their congressman now to follow up on a lot of these executive orders like you're talking. They mean nothing without legislation.
Yep.
And I would think a lot of them that he signed already are almost given if you would put it in legislation right now. I think the no men and women sports, if you voted against it, I think you'd get laughed out. So I think that's the time you should be getting this stuff in front of them. And, well, the iron's still hot, so to say, you know.
I think you're 100% accurate, Bruce. I agree. Take all these executive orders that are a temporary fix or Band-Aid. Of course, some of them are already being halted by judges, but use all of those executive orders, or the bulk of them, as the template for legislation. 100% right, because then we have something that's going to be a lot harder to overturn in another administration, unlike an executive order, just going to require signature. You're 100% right. Thank you, Bruce. Mark in Colorado, line 2. Hi, Mark. Thanks for calling in.
Hello. I
Mark.
just wanted to make a comment. Yesterday, Donald Trump took the United States of America out of the World Health Organization, and so did Argentina. Is this the deadly wound that will be healed? Also, he got on TV today and said that we're going to have peace and safety and security. And I urge everybody to read 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3, actually the whole chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. I don't think that's the deadly wound. I think that's actually, I've been teaching on that as I go through the book of Revelation. I think that's actually, and that's coming up in Revelation chapter 13, but I jumped ahead a little bit because of things that were happening in Revelation 11 and 12. But I do think that's a literal, physical, mortal, deadly wound that is received by the Antichrist. But as far as your second point, now, isn't that interesting? I need to try to pull that. Guys, see in the control room, see if we can find a clip where President Trump today was talking about Israel and peace and safety. I think that's very interesting because, again, Mark, that's why we get a little excited here. People say yesterday, I'm shocked to hear you excited about all this. You're not an interventionist or a guy that wants to see boots on the ground in Israel, these other places. No, you're exactly right. I don't. But that's what we said yesterday. There's my, political, geopolitical, economic, conservative hat. And then there's my Bible prophecy hat. And from a Bible prophecy standpoint, I'm saying, well, yeah, I want to see them get into a place where they can say peace and safety in unwalled cities, because I realize, I can kind of tell where we're at right now on God's prophetic calendar, which we're told to do by Jesus himself to understand the times. So, yeah, great call, Mark. Maureen, line 3. Hi, Maureen. Go ahead, Maureen, line 3.
Hi, Brannon. It's so nice to get through to you. I just want to comment, if the public wants to see that this fight isn't over, just watch C-SPAN. I didn't start watching C-SPAN until President Trump was elected. And I've been watching these hearings, and it's amazing how these people don't seem to use rational thought to figure things out. They're talking about fentanyl today and trying to get the analogs all under the one fentanyl thing that stands up in court. And these guys, these Dems, poor things, they're all against it. And our Republicans, or the conservatives, I should say, are doing a really good job, as far as I'm concerned. But I have nothing really to compare it to because I didn't watch it before President Trump was elected.
Well, I am glad you're watching now, Maureen, and I think you've made some very good points. Thank you, Maureen. 1-800-347-9829. Ted, line 4. Hi, Ted.
Hi. I just wanted to say hospitals are profiting from COVID. And I don't know if it's Obama's direction, and people that go in for COVID end up not coming back out of the hospital. The hospitals that are in the red, all of a sudden they're in the black now after COVID. Food for thought. I'd like to hear your response.
No, you're right, Ted. Dr. Thorpe, OBGYN, Dr. Thorpe, we produce a show with him and Dr. Moon on the weekends, the two docs. His wife is an attorney, and they've done an exhaustive amount of research to show all the medical hospital systems and the billions of dollars that was doled out to them and media, outlets. And so you're 100% right. And Scott Scarra the other night, talking about his daughter Grace, was detailing how hospitals were making more and more money when her room was designated ICU. She wasn't moved. The room was just designated, and there's more money. And ventilator, more money. You're exactly right. Follow the money. And it's horrific what's happening in this country. But hey, we're so back, don't you know? I'm being a little sarcastic today with you folks because I'm happy with some of the progress we're making, but I get tired of seeing conservatives fall into manipulated situations again, like QAnon, or buying into this idea that somehow we're back, just sit back, let Trump do his thing. Really? We have so much work to do. They want you to sit back and become apathetic. Maureen, line 1 in Ohio. Hello, Maureen.
Yes, hi. Appreciate you taking my call. Listen, I just wanted to say my My mother was euthanized with morphine. I was not there. I wasn't asked about it. I just found out later what she died from. She was in a nursing home. Was told it was morphine. I'm like, she did not have cancer, because I, assumed she must have been in a lot of pain for some reason. No, they just decided it was time.
Maureen,
And
we have
if I
heard
had
that.
been there, it would not have happened.
We have heard that story from so many people, Maureen, and I'm glad you called it to add your voice to the record. I'm sorry that happened.
We have to be so vigilant with this, because they'll do it.
You do, Maureen. You have to be an advocate. You have to write the orders in place, and then we have to sue. Use the courts, like Scott's doing. He's putting these people under deposition. He was talking about the nurses and the doctors he had under deposition. They were involved in this. Yeah, we need more people like Scott. Peggy, I'm sorry we didn't get to you, Peggy. She wanted to talk about Scott's daughter, but we did make it through quite a few calls there, folks. So the moral of the broadcast today is, folks, we have a lot of work to do to restore the republic, to keep the airwaves open, protect parental authority, bring back state rights, stop the government from, at the state or federal level, telling us our kids should be digging ditches or our kids should be engineers or lawyers. We have a lot of work to do. No, we're not back yet, folks. Take care. And that's our broadcast on those stations. And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and of course, here on Worldview Tube. One of the things to me that has been so frustrating the last few days is to find out about all the money that these government or these news agencies are receiving. I don't know. Did I put that up at worldviewreporttoday.com or not? Let's see. Yeah, here it is. The mainstream media will never recover from these shocking revelations about the Associated Press, the New York Times, and Politico. And as you scroll through this article, Politico, total awarded amount, $8.1 million. That's just Politico. I've said to my son, Logan, how is it that some of these networks do so well? How come it is they have such big staffs, beautiful buildings, satellite trucks? They seem to have everything you need. How are they generating that kind of revenue? You guys ever ask yourself that? I look at some of these characters on social media, they're just morons. And I think to myself, how did they get that many followers? Are there that many stupid Americans? Oh, there probably are, actually. But you see these people got 250,000, 500,000, million people following them. Like, they're morons. They're not saying anything of substance. In fact, a lot of what they say is not even true. But boy, the people on the right sure seem to like them. They came out of nowhere. But boy, they're good with slogans. Most of them are an inch deep and a mile wide. But maybe that's what you have to do to attract a crowd these days. Be an inch deep and a mile wide, and you will attract a crowd. Well, you actually see that. You tune on talk radio, and most of it's an inch deep and a mile wide. But people eat that up because they don't have to think too much. They can just be entertained with a little talk radio. Same thing with churches. Boy, they're packing them into some of these churches, an inch deep and a mile wide. But you have a program like this, and we talk about Fabian socialism, communitarianism. We actually bring you meat. There's not a lot of people that want that. They want milk. They can't keep up with this show because they don't want to. And I'm thinking to myself, how is it that some of these networks have gotten the buildings they have and all the staff they have? Where is that money coming from? Advertisers? Can't be. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. Well, now I know. I talked to Matt Staver this morning, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, I had no idea these people were getting that kind of money. Politico, $8.1 million. This one here is saying Politico is, they're putting it down here at $34.3 million total awarded. I don't know which number's right. This guy says he found 27 million. I found 27 million during the Biden years. Digital businesses. That's a lot of money. They got the Associated Press, supposedly independent but funded by the government. At least $19.5 million in government contracts, mostly from the State Department and the U.S. Agency of Global Media. Well, I talked to an attorney today and said, you know, I'm not an attorney, but if there's an opportunity for our organization to sue some of these groups for clawback, for the money to be returned, put me on the list. Here's another little inside baseball. You want a little inside baseball, people? There's something called pool footage. The media, the pool footage. You know, like when you see President Trump take off on the White House lawn, Marine One, and all of a sudden you see all the networks carrying it, or you see him taking off an Air Force One at Joint Base Andrews or landing in Palm Beach or giving a speech somewhere. Generally, that's what's called pool footage, P-O-O-L. And you try to get into the pool and you're blocked. It's hard to get into the pool. They want to apparently keep it as a nice little tight club. And part of it is they want you to send a cameraman and rotate. All right, you can become a part of the pool, but you're going to have to send a camera person to cover this footage, and therefore you got to get all the press passes and the security clearances. Okay, fine. And then you got to pick up dates, and you got to be on the White House lawn for Marine One to take off on set day. This is your weekend. Worldview Tube, you cover this weekend. Okay, fine. We can get a camera guy in D.C. and cover some of this. Just tell me who and where. Oh, well, wait a minute. Finds out a bunch of you have the budgets for it because you got millions of dollars from the federal government. No wonder you can afford to put cameramen here and there and everywhere and have pool footage. But if we don't join your club, you don't want us to have your pool footage. Well, here's what I said to an attorney today. If they're being subsidized by the federal government, that pool footage should be open to all of us. I want you to look at suing these people. I don't know if we'll have a case or not, but my attorney, the attorney I talked to today said, well, this is all new. We're all finding this out in real time. There may be a case. Well, we may not have to sue. We may just need to tell the White House, these guys have been government subsidized. It's unfair competition. We want the footage. We want all of it now, or we're suing these groups. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation, having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel.